Hey y'all, I just started a fantasy football inspired clothing shop called Sunday Dreamers Club. Check out sundaydreamersclub.com to find shirts that show your love for the great game of fantasy football. Listeners of this show are in luck. If you go to sundaydreamersclub.com and use the code GETREAL, that's GETREAL, you'll score 15% off your order. Please check it out because that's another way you can help out the show and me. As you know, I'm out here trying to do this content creation thing full time, so you checking this out really helps me out. Remember, use code GETREAL to get 15% off your orders at sundaydreamersclub.com. Welcome to a brand new episode of Get Real with Casey Kasem. It's the podcast that goes behind the scenes of the fantasy football industry through interviews with some of your favorites in the business. For this episode, I sat down with Tracy Gilroy-Norton. She's a fantasy football content creator who is host of Gridiron Gal podcast, part of the TGN network. She's also a writer for The League Winners and IDP Plus. We had an awesome conversation about Tracy's love for the Chiefs and the Jets, how she thought Don Mattingly was her dad's best friend, starting her fantasy football journey in 2020, her experience at the Fantasy Football Expo, her love for dogs, and a ton more. Make sure you're following Tracy on Twitter at GG_FFbots. You can follow me at the Casey Kasem and the podcast at GetReal_pod. This podcast is a proud member of the DAP network. Soon I'll be putting out content with both South Harmon FF and Rotoballer. I'm thrilled to be a part of these teams and I can't wait to start putting out content. Also, thank you so much for being awesome human beings. Get Real with Casey Kasem is a finalist for the Fantasy Sports Writers Association's Best Fantasy Podcast, All Multiple Sports. This is the second year in a row that the podcast has been a finalist, and to be up against so many talented and well-established podcasts, that means so much. So thank you all again for the support. Also, make sure you go check out sundaydreamersclub.com. If you go there, you can check out all the cool fantasy football t-shirts, and you can help support me on my new journey putting out fantasy football content. And now, here's my chat with Tracy Gilroy-Norton on Get Real with Casey Kasem. And we'll just get into it and all that jazz. And yeah. So this is really fun because now I'm able to sit down with people during the day and I don't have to wait till the nighttime. So I don't have to wait all day to talk to people.
So wonderful.
I'm so excited. And oh, looky here. Like, it's been a while since I actually recorded a podcast because I was out of the country. And when I came back, I had all these banked up. So you get to be my real new, amazingly new podcast. So
I'm very excited
coming on. All right, why don't you go ahead first and foremost? Everybody that's here listening right now, they might not know who you are. So if you want to just kind of give them your name and a little backstory as to how you got into fantasy football.
Well, you'll find me on Twitter as GG_FFbots. I also, on my podcast, I go by Gridiron Gal. And it's currently it's a WordPress.com website. It's tgnnetwork.com and then .wordpress.com. If you put in TGN Network, it should pop up. I finally recorded my second podcast. I've been a guest on so many, but I recorded my second one with my buddy Evan, and I should be getting that out soon, so you can watch for that. But you'll find a couple of articles on there. Like I said, I'm a procrastinator, so I have tons of things in the works. I just haven't gotten them going yet. But yeah, you can find me there. I'm always on Twitter. The funny thing about football is I knew nothing about football 3 years ago. Like pre-COVID, I knew nothing. The only thing I knew was my dad watched the Jets. I watched them with him, but I didn't understand the game, so I found it extremely boring. Which many of you know, if you don't know what's going on at all, I still can't call out plays. Like, I'm not good at stats. I'll be the first to admit it. But I understand the game.
Yeah.
And my best friend, Jimmy Carter, greatest name in history. Once COVID hit, we started getting into football and he started teaching me more and more. And I realized how unbelievably fun it was. And then I found fantasy, and crazy me, last year was my first year to do any fantasy football at all, any drafts. I mean, I was hardcore. I've been hardcore into looking at people's stats and videos and stuff. So I had at least 25 best balls done before the NFL draft was actually done. I'm proud to say that I did pick out a few outstanding guys back in the day, like Laporta and Amon-Ra, and, just from watching their videos, like everybody did, right? But I was excited that some of my rookies actually took off as opposed to some of the other ones that Zach Wilson just did not.
Yeah, Zach
But
Wilson.
right? Oh God. But yeah, I realized how fun it was, and then I went to the expo and well, before that actually, I got myself into the Scott Fish Bowl, and that's what set everything off. Everything went into motion. I mean, I was an absolute nobody, which I still think I am. This every day, I swear I wake up and I'm going to be like, I have no followers, but I went from like nobody, absolutely nobody knowing who I was, to thousands and thousands of impressions a day on Twitter, which, yes, doesn't mean much, but it's crazy to me how I went from like nobody knowing me to going to the expo and people like, saying my name and saying they were excited to meet me, like all of these people that were very, very up there, and like I'm talking to like Marcus and Fitzy, and I don't even know who these people are until after the fact, which I think was a bigger blessing, to be honest, because I wasn't quite as starstruck, and then I was like, oh my God, I know, like I read their blogs and I listen to their podcasts, like what is going on right now?
For sure. Yeah.
It was absolutely crazy that I'm standing in this room with all of these people that are just the top of their field, and they're like normal. I feel like the ones that are on the top are the most normal people. Not that everyone isn't, but like they're so down to earth.
Right.
They wouldn't even, I mean, you wouldn't believe it. But the expo is basically kind of when everything blew up, and I was hardcore into fantasy and signed up for way too many leagues.
That'll get you. That'll get you. Well, okay, so it's an interesting story to have you on here and listen to that story, because you have been so new to fantasy because you haven't played it for as long as a lot of people. And we'll get into all of that and what maybe you had to overcome and all the fun stuff that comes with putting out content and all that. We'll get into that. But before we do that, you were talking about, growing up and your dad was big into sports and you watched the Jets, and you were born in Ireland, correct?
Yes, I
Okay,
was.
so how does that translate over to being a fan of watching football, watching the Jets, knowing that your dad is a fan of that team?
Well, what's funny is for years and years and years, even after I moved here, I thought Don Mattingly was my dad's best friend, because when I was growing up, my uncles from here, I had a few, like my aunt married an American and moved here. So I considered my uncle's family all of my uncles as well, kind of thing. So they would come to Ireland and visit, and they would bring Don Mattingly like teddy bears and stuff and say, well, this is your dad's best friend, because they were trying to get me on the Yankee wavelength, point me in the right direction. So I grew up thinking that, and thinking my dad knew who the Jets were and like all this. And my dad was actually in one of the top football/soccer teams in Northern Ireland when he was younger. He was a great player, like Irish football, basically. And so I always appreciated soccer much more than anything else. And then we moved here, and my dad, God rest his soul, I mean, everything was a sport, everything. Like he could sit and watch a golf game. And I mean, not that it's not a sport, but like he would watch every Olympic, and curling to him was a sport because it was on TV. And if it was the only thing on, that's what he was watching. He was just a gigantic sports guy. And for years and years, I didn't watch sports at all. And then my dad passed away, and that's when I started getting back into it. And I love watching a good Gaelic football match, an Irish football match. I love watching a good soccer game. Manchester United is my team. But there's something about football, man. There's just something about football that I absolutely love. And the only thing that I wish is that when he was watching them back in the day, that I got into football then. Because if he knew how big I was into football now, he would be so psyched. I mean, so psyched. That's all he ever wanted. And I was actually, segue, I brought it up on the podcast with Yvette. All I've ever wanted was my kids. I have a boy and a girl. She's 14, he's 12. And all I wanted him to do was like football, and he's hated it, right? Like, just didn't like it. Well, he watched the Super Bowl, texted me the whole time. He watched it with his boys. He's now a huge football fan and is learning about it. And I legit cried because he texted me and he was like, "We did it, bro. We won. Like, Mommy, this is the greatest day ever." And I'm like, "Oh, my boy." Like, it was the greatest thing to come out of the season is that I now have a little football fan. So I get to experience it with him like I wish I could have with my dad back in the day. But yeah, it's kind of cool because if you go and watch Irish people watch football, everyone has a different jersey on. Like, they could be watching a Jets game and there's every single team jersey because none of them know what's going on, and they have no clue. They're just excited about it and just want to do sports. But now that the Steelers are officially Northern Ireland's team because they did that whole new, marketing for they gave specific teams to specific countries type of thing. Unfortunately, we got the Steelers, like, wah, wah. But yeah, it's cool because they're all starting to actually wear Steelers stuff because now they have a team to support, which is so strange to me because I'm like, no. Jets are the Chiefs or the Lions. Like, that's the three. That's your three. Stop going with the Steelers, but okay. But now they're all officially wearing like one community type thing as opposed to just
random.
Yeah. And jerseys that might be 7 years old, It's great and I love it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I love it too. I love that so much. That's awesome.
Well, and it kind of it plays into fantasy football, right? It's hard to have a team that you love when you're hardcore into fantasy because you're rooting for players most of the time as opposed to a team. So in that retrospect, it makes sense that kind of everybody wears a different jersey because, we're all rooting for maybe 6 different teams on one Saturday or Sunday because that's who we have on our best ball or on our fantasy, teams or dynasty, So it's kind of cool. I showed a few of my cousins fantasy football and they're like, "This is just no." And I'm like, "Start out with best ball." Which I will not be doing next year because it's so boring. I mean, it's okay. It's fun.
Just do a bunch of mock drafts and,
Exactly. It's just like getting ready. Because the problem is, like, once the season starts, you do nothing. So you kind of like sit back and I just want to have control to move people. That's what's fun to me is dropping players and then having people freak out because you dropped somebody that, like, is supposed to pop off and in your gut you're like they're just not going to.
Do you have some inside information we don't know about? That's how they're looking at it though. They're like, "Oh man, everybody's getting on Google just searching, seeing what's going on."
Right. Well, like, I was big into Rico. I always say his last name wrong. I think it's Dowdle, the way you say it. I was big into him and I swore he was going to do so much better than he actually did. And I mean, his name was up there quite a few times, but he didn't perform nearly as well as I was hoping. So I dropped him pretty well, about halfway through, because I had hopes. But, there's always players that you kind of get this gut feeling about. And in my mind, if I don't go with my gut and then they're the ones that like do wonderful, I'm like, well, see, I should have just, like I have no problem reaching for somebody. No problem. If I want them, I take them. If I want to complete my stack and I should be picking them 12th round, I might pick them the 8th or the 7th round because I don't want somebody else sniping them off of me, That's just how I work. And it's been working well so far.
So far. Playing fantasy football is it's a lot when you first get started because it's so new. And you brought up Dynasty and you brought up different kinds of league types and league
Oh my
settings.
God.
When you first started, like I know you were doing best ball and but bringing up Dynasty, that's just kind of a beast of its own. Did you play Dynasty your first year as well, or what did you
Yes.
do? Yeah.
I did everything. I did a vampire league.
Oh, wow.
I did a survivor league.
Wow, you just got it all at one time.
Oh man, I floundered so badly. It's not even funny. Like I'm kind of glad I did it because I got experience in I think I tried every league except the monster one. And in saying that, I was kind of helping a couple of my buddies with not helping them with theirs, but more like watching what they were doing so I could learn it. But I was so overwhelmed. The only good thing is I was forced to learn everything very quickly. And this is the greatest community of people that I have ever met in my entire life. I mean, I've never felt like I fit in anywhere until I got into fantasy football, for real. The Twitter group and all of our like little separate little, chats. I mean, it's changed everything. I feel like I have people to talk to about everything and anything, but everybody's just willing to give you help. So there was never a lack of support if I didn't know what I was doing. I could always ask somebody in the league or ask one of my buddies or, so I was forced to kind of do it. I just did a shit job at it. Like I did a horrible job. So come next year, at least I know which ones I like the best. Like the vampire leagues, super cool. And I was the vampire this year. So super awesome. I loved it. Next year, I kind of want to do a monster one, but I won't do nearly as many as I did. This way, at least, even if I do one of each type, I can put my proper attention into, let's say, 7 instead of 21 or something that I did, like first year out. Ridiculous.
It does. And as you go, you kind of learn what's going to work for you and what's not going to work for you. And there's so many different types of leagues, like
and the
new ones
problem
all
was
the
too, I
time,
had to spread out over like 4 different sites as well.
Yeah.
So it was almost like I forgot that this one was here. And then I was like, oh my God, I didn't go in and set a lineup for that one. And some of them, if you didn't set a lineup, as you know, there was no lineup put out. So then you just missed out on points and you miss out 1 week and that's it. You're done.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely taught myself a good lesson very early on. But see, part of it was that people were just so overwhelmingly generous that they were like, we'll waive the fee, just come on and like we just want you in there.
Oh, they're really trying to get you addicted real quick.
Right. Like more like, we want your energy, which like I'm so humble. I appreciate absolutely everybody and everything. So not that I would have said no because I loved it, but I didn't want to say no just because I didn't want to not necessarily offend anybody, but I definitely wanted to try everything. I just didn't realize quite how overwhelming it was all going to be.
Yeah, it can get like that, and I've had to say no to some leagues, I've had to leave some leagues, it's
Yeah,
always a hard decision, but and you like you
that's yeah,
said, they wanted you to be in the league, which is flattering and awesome because you wanna be in leagues with people that you enjoy being in leagues with, you know? You don't wanna be in a
exactly.
league with a bunch of people that you don't know, not that that's bad, but just, like, it's
Right.
more fun to be able to, like, chat and go back and forth and
Yeah,
do
and
all that fun stuff.
I love the banter. That's
Yeah.
one of my favorite. And right off the bat, I said, "Listen, I'm a girl, yes, but I have a backbone. So please don't like censor yourself or treat me any differently just because I mean, and like being a girl in this industry, or woman, I should say, in this industry, I'm sure you understand, there is that kind of fine line where you can get treated with kid gloves a little bit because they're like, oh, I don't know if you can take. And I'm like, listen, just treat me like everybody else. If you want to talk shit, please do it because I love it. I love talking crap with everybody. I love jumping in there and just being one of the, like, not having to worry about it, just have fun. And the chat is probably one of my favorite things because you just go back and forth like I said, people are great at calling you out, which I love, and no one is ever short of giving you help if you need it, if you ask for it. And I love that because you're competing against each other, but these people are still going to be like, well, this is what I think you should do. In my opinion, drop him, keep him. Because I'll be completely honest, the waiver wire and trading threw me for a loop. It's not that I didn't understand it, but setting prices for people is hard right off the bat. And like knowing because you're trying to look ahead to see if you should trade this person for this person. There was so many injuries this past year as well. It was just like, at some points it was like, well, who do I pick? Like so I would reach out to a couple people and be like, hey guys, what do you think? And I got honest opinions back every time, which was great. But I say go with your gut. I picked a kicker in the 8th round. So
So there you go. Well, you didn't take him in the
but
first, so that's all
he
right.
was number one, so it's okay. It's okay.
Hey, you know what? Sometimes, going one direction when everybody's going a different direction is the right idea is to just kind of mix it up a little bit. So, especially if you're in a lot of leagues you
Right.
and bringing up being a woman too in fantasy football and in the space, did that ever cross your mind when you first started? Did you have any sort of like, oh, I want to be taken respectfully. I wanted to be respected, and that
Absolutely.
maybe it was you for me, I didn't really have an issue with being scared about like, oh, a guy's gonna come at me or a guy's gonna say something
Right.
or right
Right.
because it comes with the territory, right? That
Exactly.
happens.
Yeah.
But like, not that I want it to happen, but did you go into it? How did you go into actually just playing before you even put out content? How did you go into it thinking about I'm a woman going into this quote unquote man's game?
That's why I tried to kind of learn as much as I could before I hopped in because I didn't want to be one of the and like I said, I still don't know stats. I'm trying to learn plays, but for some reason my little brain cannot figure out when they're in like certain formations. It's driving me nuts to be honest because I've been trying to figure it out forever. But I tried to learn as much as possible. So if somebody did come at me like nicely or not nicely, that I had the capacity to actually have a conversation, that I wasn't just like, I love football. I love, their uniforms and all of that. Like I wasn't one of those girls, because that's what they think you are right off the bat, right? Not our group, not our community, because
Right.
they
The community
most
is
99% of them respect women just
mhm.
as much as they do their buddy down the street that talks football. I haven't come across many that don't. Um, but outside of our community, you tell people that you write fantasy football content and they almost snicker at you. And it's like, all right, well, go ahead, like ask me a few questions and I will talk to you about football. And then you stand and talk to them for 10 minutes. And it's like, okay, at least you know what you're talking about. But
Yeah.
that's why I tried to kind of make sure that I knew enough where I just didn't want to embarrass myself.
No, I get that.
Right? Like you
In
said, I
front of
wasn't
anybody, you don't want to come off like you don't know what you're talking about, even if you don't
exactly.
know what you're talking about. So,
Exactly. Yes,
yeah.
exactly. Like, I wanted to know enough where I could at least have a full blown conversation. But like you said, I wasn't really worried about anybody coming at me because that stuff doesn't really bother me. I mean, in different contexts it does.
Right.
I'm still, a human being,
Right.
so but for them to come like at me as far as you don't know anything, I wasn't really afraid of that. I was more afraid of me embarrassing myself.
Aren't we all? Aren't we all? Oh, imposter
Yeah.
syndrome is real too. When you go into things like you put out content now and you haven't even been playing fantasy football for like that long, which is cool. I think that's so dope to just like kind of immerse yourself in that world and learn as you're doing it, and that's
Well,
the only
and
way
which
you're
is
going to learn.
also a reason why I was nervous too, because it's like, okay, one, I'm a girl, and two, I've only been doing this like a year or two. So, it's almost like, well, what do you have to bring to the table kind of thing. And to me,
Yeah.
it's this is it. If you don't like me, just don't listen or don't engage and I I have so many people that I can talk to and that I can just be myself around that it's been like I said, it's honestly been such a blessing. It really, really has. The group that we're a part of, that one group, has been such a blessing to me. It's just there's just so many different facets of it that people don't quite understand, and they don't get the whole like family bond thing.
Right.
Because you do, like, I left the expo with people that I will consider my friend for the rest of my life. And it's great. I cannot wait to go back because next year is going to be so much better because I know so many different people and I've been talking to them throughout the entire year. So I can't wait to get back because it's more like a class reunion
Yeah.
than
And
anything else.
it's better than a class reunion because I actually like all
It's
the people.
right. You're not trying to like,
Yeah.
prop yourself up and drive
Yeah.
up in a
Be
Lamborghini
like,
like a
do some
class
Romeo
reunion.
and Michelle.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Hey y'all, I just started a fantasy football inspired clothing shop called Sunday Dreamers Club. Check out sundaydreamersclub.com to find shirts that show your love for the great game of fantasy football. Listeners of this show are in luck. If you go to sundaydreamersclub.com and use the code GETREAL, that's GETREAL, you'll score 15% off your order. Okay, so the community and you bringing up the fact that making friends in this community and all of that, and it is kind of hard to make friends as an adult too, especially when you have
Absolutely.
children and a job and you're doing all this other stuff. It's hard to form relationships like that. So
Yeah, yeah. And I gotta be honest, I don't like most women. I mean, and that sounds awful. I just not that I don't like them. I've always been like the black sheep, so I don't fit into that like mold of the normal mom. Like, I never talk to my kids like they were babies. My kids and me have full blown conversations about every adult thing. My daughter still considers me her best friend, which is such a blessing at 14.
yeah,
You know,
really.
right? And she's honestly the best kid out there. And my kids don't fight ever. I mean, I'm
Wow.
so I I'm like so unbelievably blessed in like every facet of my life, but just I feel like as far as friends go, it's almost impossible as a mom outside of school
Yeah.
to make friends with people. So you kind of become friends with whoever your kids' friends' moms are. And most of them either didn't like me or I was, the mom that curses a lot, or, talks normal to my, like, keeps it real with my kids, has normal conversations. I mean, my kids can sit down and have a conversation about almost anything. And they're some of their friends, it's just like they have no idea what's going on in the world. And, not that I have to go into anything hardcore, but I'd rather have little human beings that understand everything and know, kind of can go out into the world and survive and have
Yeah.
street smarts. And it's hard to make friends with people that just don't think the same way that you do. So it's been like, I'm the black sheep of the family. I'm the black sheep of everywhere except this little world, where all of these women think the same way that I do. There's so many of us women out that I absolutely love, and there's more coming on every day. I mean, the fact that we have the Women of Fantasy Football and we can do our bi-weekly Zoom meetings, and just we can all chat, and everyone kind of thinks the same, and they're in different countries, and it's wonderful to me, because you have people that you feel like you can talk to, and you don't have to try so hard. You know what I mean? It's
Mm-hmm.
just easy, because it is hard making friends.
Yeah. It is, but not at the expo. It's not hard because
No.
so much fun. So we will get into that, but before we do, I just kind of want to get into your journey putting out fantasy football content, because that's something that I know people listening to the show may be listening because they want to get involved in fantasy content and they just don't know how to get started. What's the background on how you got started putting out content?
I before so I got into the Scott Fish Bowl and started putting things out on Twitter, just like random blurbs or whatever. I had nothing going. And for some reason, I honestly, I can't even tell you why. I really can't. Um, every day there was more and more people that were just engaging with me. And then I said that I was interested in starting up a podcast about the Scott Fish Bowl, since I had never done anything before. So Tyler from the Fantasy Football Advice Network reached out and said, listen, I want to I want to put your stuff up on our site. And I said, you realize that I just started and I don't even have a podcast yet, right? He's like, I don't care. Whenever you get it up, like, shoot it out to me. And that was kind of my first break. And I don't know how it came about, but thanks to him, I got inspired to do a little bit more. So I did my first one, and then people started listening, and I got more into Scott Fishbowl and like tweeting out like the hashtag. And then I had more people that were asking me if I would be on their podcast. And then, Bob Lung reached out and was like, hey, are you coming to the expo? And I honestly couldn't afford to go. And he was like, listen, somebody as passionate as you and as new as you will get you out here somehow. So they figured it out and they got me out to the expo. And, for me, it's not being afraid of doing something and doing it wrong. Even though, like we talked about, you don't want to embarrass yourself, but the worst people can do is say no, right? So I would legit just go out and be like, hey, if you want me to be on your podcast, and I think I did that once, and then people just started coming to me and asking me if I would do it. Jack Lucchini was my first one. I adore him. He's one of the most wonderful people on the planet. Just so down to earth and so lovely. And Courtney, who does a lot of the women, he mainly focuses on women with his podcasts, which is one of the most wonderful things, but he kind of does all sports, which I love. he helped me a ton at the very beginning. And once I did, I think 2, that's when everyone kind of started being, well, do you want to be on mine? Do you want to be on mine? And I just didn't say no, because I was like, you know what? I'm just going to put myself out there. And then when I got to the expo, I started talking to different people, and thankfully I met up with Aaron St. Dennis, who is mad scientist on Twitter, and he introduced me to a bunch of people, and that's when I started writing for the league winners. And then not that long ago, IDP Plus, who used to be IDP Guys, my mind was blown. Said they're like, we saw you on a podcast and we love that you love IDP, which is my favorite thing in the
Oh.
world. I'm obsessed with it. And they asked me to join them, which I was so taken aback by. So now I write, haven't in a while because I was moving and getting sorted, but now I write for them as well, which is unbelievable. It's so, yeah, to me, it's just not being afraid of getting rejected. Just going out and just, if you want it, take it. Like, just go. Just put out some content. And listen, I've told everybody, for whatever reason, I'm a somebody that's a nobody, if you know what I mean. If anyone feels like they're teeny tiny, which I still think I am, feel free to hop on my coattails, man. You can be on my podcast. I'll be on yours. Like, I will, use whatever quote unquote, stardom I have at the moment, to help anyone and everyone do their thing. So if you feel I can help you in any way, shape, or form, just reach out, because I'm all about helping everybody. I don't look at how many followers people have. I do, in the sense that if someone has 17,000 and they want to follow me, I'm like, holy crap, like, that's amazing. But if you have 2 followers and you want me to be on your podcast, okay, because I was that person a year and a half ago, you
Right.
know? Like, I still only have over 2,000 or 2,500 or something, which is nothing in this world, on Twitter compared to most. But to me, everyone is special because they all took their time to click follow. And I started out with 2 people following me, you know what I mean? So I'm all about helping anyone that I can. And I feel like most of us are, but most people are afraid to ask.
Yes, I think that being afraid is something that, like, I know a lot of people, including myself at first, but then if you don't do it, then yeah, what's the worst that can happen? Like you said, say no. Like, if
Exactly.
you don't do it at all, then you're not going to know if they would even say no. They could have said
Exactly.
yes immediately. You don't know. And, having 2,000 followers, having 10,000 followers, when you have 2,500 followers, that's, you look at it like this, where that's 2,500 people who care about what you have to say, that found
Right?
something about you that made them go, I need to
Yeah,
follow this person, which is so crazy to think that there's that many people out there that even know who
I
you
am.
are, who I am, or whatever.
Exactly,
Like,
right?
it's just it's
It
an
blows my
interesting
mind.
thing. It is
Yeah.
mind gets blown constantly on this whole fantasy football journey. And when you first started putting out content, like, especially with the podcasting, guesting on people's podcasts and doing all that, had you ever done anything like that before, or was this your
Nothing.
first experience with that?
First experience with all of it,
Oh, yeah.
which is why my first podcast was just my voice,
Mm,
because I was self-conscious about being on camera. And
mm,
then every podcast you do, you're on camera. So I was like, well, I better get over this really quickly, or else I'm not going to be doing anything, you
yeah.
know? So I just hopped in with both feet, and you know, if I look like an idiot, I look like like, I'll be the first one to laugh at myself, because I feel like that's the way we should be anyway. But yeah, like, just if there's somebody that you idolize, just go ask. Like, so, okay, for example, there's an Irish guy who is my favorite podcaster in the entire world, Colin. Um,
Yeah, Kelly.
Yes,
Yeah.
I love him, partly because he's Irish, obviously, and because he just puts out great content. I asked him to be on my podcast and he said yes. Like, he said
That's
yes.
that's
I
so
was
cool.
and his mind was blown that I asked him to be on, which is crazy to me. Like, it makes no sense, you know? Um, and I have people like Gary Van Dyke, who I consider one of my good friends. Like, if you had told me 2 years ago that I'd be speaking to these people that, I started listening to as friends, or they check in on me every once in a while as a buddy, like, I would have laughed in your face. But, and they all thank me for asking them to be on, or thank me for being on their podcast. And every single time I'm like, you do know who I am, right? Like, you know that you're asking this person and not like Jim Coventry to be on your podcast. You know what I mean? Like, it's just Tracy Norton. I don't quite get it, but okay, I'm happy to do it.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is keeping that kind of being humble, not getting too big for your britches. Because listen, there's always going to be somebody bigger than you. Always. There's always going to be somebody that knows more than you. As long as I'm always talking, you'll see in my Twitter, I'm always talking about karma and paying it forward. And it's just my thing. In my mind, karma is basically all it is. If you put good out to the world, then good will come back, right? So I try to help as many people as I can, and I try to put as much good out there as I can. And that includes being thankful for everything and anything. And I think that's partly what shines through. At least that's what I'm told. Because I ask people all the time, I'm like, so why did why did you click follow? And apparently also it's because I write and I do the podcasts how I would speak, and that's not how normal people do it, I guess. But I don't know any other way. I'm like, well,
Right.
this is just who I am. Like, I can't be a fake person. I can't write analytically. I mean, I can, but I find it boring. I write how I speak. I say whatever's on my mind, and I ramble way too much.
Join the club.
Oh, I love it. I love when people tell me they ramble, because then at least I don't
That's all
feel
I
bad.
do. Yeah, that's all I do. Like, I was on a couple of podcasts the other day, and I'm like talking and talking and talking, and I'm like, I haven't been on a podcast in a long time where I've actually like got to talk like about something else than, like I love this
Right.
podcast to death, but like doing something different, I was just like found myself just talking and talking and talking, and I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Me too. And then I get self-conscious because I'm like, am I interrupting too much? Am I talking too much? And in my mind, I'm like, just talk, do your thing. They can
Yeah.
edit it out, and just be yourself, because once you start overthinking, that's when you screw yourself up. That's when everything goes downhill. Because I'm also one of those people that if you ask me in the moment, like, about a specific person or thing, my mind goes blank instantly, and I'm like I know nothing in the moment. That's just the type of person that I am. So I do a bunch of research usually beforehand. But that's why I like this type of podcast, because I don't have to worry about stats, or
Yeah.
if I do, I can look it up on my phone. You know what I mean? But most people, they're just like laid back, and it's just fun, and if not, they let you know ahead of time. So yeah, it's just be yourself. Don't be afraid to go out there and do your thing. Just say what's on your mind, and go for it. Just ask those people that you idolize if you can do a collab with them. And if they say no, okay. I mean, it's not ruining your life or your day or anything. They're not going to say it disrespectfully. I can guarantee that, because, I mean, most people in this industry, they're all very kind for the most part. And, if people can make it happen, they will. And if they can't, they'll say, listen, we'll do it off season, or, maybe we can fit something in then, or I just can't. But
Yeah,
it's
right.
never going to come off in a way that makes you uncomfortable. So just go for it.
Right. And I think sometimes people are like, "Well, I don't want to bother that person," or "I don't want to be," which I mean,
Yes,
it can come off that way if you do it a certain way. But if you let
exactly.
somebody genuinely know that you appreciate their content, that you're showing them respect, you're showing them that you actually
Right.
care. You're not
And
just
most of
asking to
them love
ask.
it. They're like, "Oh my God, thank you."
Yeah.
Because I got to be honest, most people are very humble, like that you wouldn't
Right.
expect to be, that have the right to have an ego, and they just don't.
Oh,
They just don't. They're just the kindest people that you could talk to. So most of them are going to be thrilled that you asked them because they haven't gotten asked, or not many people have the nerve to ask them. So they're like, heck yeah, of course I will. Or thank you so much for considering me one of those higher voices, like Gary Van Dyke always. He's like, you always give me a big ego because I'm always, talking him up to himself. I'm like, you realize you're like this giant IDP guy, and I was afraid to talk to you. He's like,
yeah.
that's so silly. And I said, don't worry, because I'm going to run up and give you a hug next year. Don't worry about it. And he's like, I'm all for it. I can't wait. But you just gotta, just don't be afraid.
And the expo, I mean, that's a place where you go to meet people in real life and get to actually hang out and
Yeah.
meet up with your homies and have a good time. And
Yeah.
how was that experience overall for you? And is there anything that sticks out that was something that you really like? Wow, that's a memory that I'm not gonna ever forget.
It was extremely overwhelming, to say the least. But what I found funny is that the expo itself on Sunday doesn't even feel like the reason why you go.
Yeah, I do notice
Right?
that.
It's all the experiences before that, like draft night out, and like the poker game that they had. And it's really all about connections and meeting people, and like reconnecting with the people that you then now know, which I thought was great. It's more about hanging out and having a great time and talking football. And I was expecting much more of a like factory manufactured type of like, well, this is an expo, and like
Yeah,
I'm used to,
right.
like you don't go to Comic-Con and expect to hang out with your buddies. It's just a totally
Yeah,
different
it's
experience. It's not the same whatsoever. But this you go to, and you're looking forward to all the events before Sunday,
mhm.
which is so funny.
It is. It's hilarious that there's so much, and just to see it grow because it's grown so much since it started. And like I've
I can't even
been,
imagine.
I mean, it's just to think of where it started and then where it is now and how many people attend it. And for people that are listening that haven't gone or that don't know what the Fantasy Football Expo is, you should go check that out. So go Google it and go to
Absolutely.
fantasyfootballexpo.com. Tickets are on sale now. Not an
Yep.
ad, but just some place that I just have to back. I have to back that
Yeah,
place. I have to back the
absolutely.
event, and you get to experience something that is not even something you would ever imagine. It's just such an amazing experience, and
It's
even
hard to
if you're
put it
not,
into
it's
words.
hard to put it into words. And
Yeah.
if you're going to it thinking that you can only go to it if you're a creator of content, or that you have to work for a big site to go or whatever.
Exactly.
No, it's for everyone that's a fantasy football fan. So whether you,
Exactly.
you put out content, you don't put out content, you have 5 followers, you have a million followers, it doesn't matter. There's all
Yeah.
different kinds of people there, and it's fun. It's just fun. So being at the expo and getting to hang out with people for the first time and do all of that, did you find yourself meeting like a lot of new people that you didn't
Oh my
like?
God.
I know you
So
go into it like I know everybody, right? You go into it thinking that you know all these people, and then there's so many more people than you
Well, that's the
even thought.
funny part. I went into it knowing like no one.
Yeah.
For real. Honestly, I was doing fantasy football, And months before, I saw that there was an expo, and I said to myself, next year I'm going to that. And I ended up going to the one last year. So I was expecting to go to this one as my first one, the upcoming one. And I went into it, brand new, just because my first ever big draft was the Scott Fish Bowl and then draft night out. Those are my first two. And I went to draft night out not even realizing we were doing it live in front of
Oh.
everybody. I was terrified, but I sat down and everybody just was so unbelievably kind and showed me what I was doing and what I should be doing. And I left that weekend knowing, my God, so many more people.
Right. Yeah.
Look, I couldn't even, I mean, people that, like I said, I will now consider friends for the rest of my life. Like Ryan Kennedy, I adore him. He's one of the greatest human beings to walk this planet.
Right.
Chuck, ugh.
Well, plus, first of all, let's go back to Ryan because he looks like Tony Romo. Okay, anyway, let's keep going.
I call him Superman, so I make fun of him all the time. I
Oh,
put him in
man.
AI stuff with Superman clothing and send it to him. And he has the cutest family, and he's such a wonderful dude. And
Yeah.
but that's everybody. But like you leave with the certain kind of little shell group of people that
Mhm.
you just click with immediately, and that's why I'm so much more excited to go back this upcoming year, because I now have those friendships where last year, if Aaron and Tim, who are the two buddies I was hanging out with, if they weren't standing next to me, I was that girl that was kind of in the corner because I felt awkward because I didn't know anybody enough to where I could just go up and kind of talk to them, until the end of the weekend. I got much braver. But this year, I know, I can't even, I kind of want an extra week because there's so many people I want to just go to lunch or dinner with or
Yeah.
sit down and grab a beer with, and there's just not going to be enough time.
It really feels like there's not enough time. It's crazy how
No.
fast it goes. It just
Ugh, that's the depressing part.
I
And
know.
that's what people I don't think realize, that yes, the expo is its thing on Sunday. It's brilliant. It's set up wonderfully, but there's just, you wish that there was more days of events before, because you just don't get enough time to see everybody, especially
Mhm.
if you have friends. You just don't, because you're trying to do all these other things as well. And you're sitting at a certain table or you're doing a draft, so you don't get to go out and talk to everybody, and you kind of just want to be like, oh, I just want to go grab a beer, and you just don't have time because there's so many cool things to do.
Yeah, there are. Did you get to go on Sunday and see any of the panels or hang out at any of the
I
booths or any of
did.
that stuff?
I walked around for the entire day until it closed, and it was great. I loved it. People do such a good job. They put so much time and effort. I love the fact that a lot of them draft while you're there at the booth, which is cool, or you can sign up for ones in the future at the booth. It's so well done and thought out. And all the different like pens and stickers and stuff that you can get is fun too, but it's more about just actually seeing people, like, oh my God, I know your Twitter handle, like now I know what you look like.
Yeah.
I can see your face, and that's what I'm most excited about, is just going back and legit getting to physically be in the same room as all of you guys at the same time, so I can actually talk to y'all face to face. I mean, it's going to be so absolutely wonderful. And hopefully, I mean, everyone, it's funny because everyone's like, I'm so drunk. I'm so drunk. I had half of one drink the entire week. And I'm
Yeah.
like, next year, I'll feel much more comfortable about having a few more drinks and like unwinding a little bit more,
Just don't
because
unwind too much.
I can't.
Because I've been there, and
I'm not.
the first expo I went to was, oh man,
I've
Yes.
heard so many stories from
There's
so many people.
you gotta learn to drink water and pace yourself, so yeah.
A couple of people woke up on the roof of
Oh,
the parking
yes.
garage
They
last
may or
year.
may not have I mean, some of those people may have told stories on this podcast,
Yes,
I don't know, you know?
exactly. Well, that's why I'm not calling anybody out,
No,
you know?
no, no, they're killing
But,
themselves up, but, you know.
but I love the stories like that. Like, those are the ones that I live for because it just everyone has such a good time and just enjoys themselves. And some some of us, like, I know I've been counting down the days. I cannot wait until the next one. I'm just so excited to go. I
Yeah,
can't wait.
it's something to look forward to, and you wrote about your experience on the league winners. That's where you wrote about your fantasy football expo
Yes, yes.
experience. But so everybody should go read that. But for somebody that's going for the first time, what's a piece of advice that you think they really should take with them going into the whole thing?
Go into it, I would say, with an open mind. Just go into it and don't close yourself off to anything. Be open to every experience. Try to get as much as you can out of every day. Just don't let it overwhelm you because it very quickly can. So just take each day as each day comes and enjoy it. Just enjoy yourself. Don't kind of say, well, I'm just going to go to the expo and not go to this or not go to this. Just every day try and put yourself out there because you're meeting people and different people at every event you go to. Like
Hmm.
the toss that they had. What is that called?
Cornhole?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Like, the cornhole was awesome, and then they had different leagues that were drafting around that restaurant. Draft night out was great. They had the poker. So just like, do as many things as you can and try not to feel overwhelmed because honestly, everyone that's there kind of feels the same way. It's like going to the first day of school. You assume you're the only one that feels nervous. No, everyone that goes for the first time is nervous. And I'm sure all those people that have to open up a booth every year get some sort of nervous, hoping people come to their booth.
Yeah.
So we're all in the same boat, everyone's feeling the same way. So just try and go and know that it's not all about Sunday. It's the entire weekend. It's about connecting with people and making friends and just do your thing. Just enjoy it. Like,
You yeah.
genuinely, like Christmas morning, just enjoy it.
Just like that. Like the feeling is just
That's
so
what I attribute
intense.
it to as an
Yeah.
adult.
Well, that's basically how it feels, and, you know, we've been talking about just having a sense of belonging as an adult and having that kind of those bonds with those people that we just meet out at the expo, or just
Right,
meet online, haven't even met in person, but,
right.
both of us have lost a parent, and that's a something that I don't want anybody to have to go
It's an
through, and I know that they
experience.
do.
Yeah,
It's an experience for sure, and talking about living your life and doing things, just going out there and doing all the stuff you can. How has I know that you're the reason you got into sports is because of your dad and wanting to have that
right.
connection even after he's gone, but how has that played a crucial role in how you look at fantasy football, how you put out content, how you do things in this space? How has your dad's influence affected you?
Well, my dad had a stroke before he passed away, so he lived for 4 years after the stroke. I mean, my dad was it, the amount of people that came to his funeral was so overwhelming because he was just the kindest man. So when he got sick, I was like, you know what? I'm done with not living life like you could lose it at any moment. So that's when I started doing my random complimenting 10 people a day experiment, which I did, which my daughter now does. And I still do. I go up to, like, if I like somebody's hair, I will go right up to them and say, your hair looks amazing today. Because, to be honest, yes, it makes them feel wonderful, but you get the same feeling back.
Yeah.
I now will, I stop and take pictures of things I find beautiful. And I take time out of my day to appreciate things, because my dad had he didn't have high blood pressure, and from one day to the next he had a stroke, and that was it. It paralyzed half of his body, and it changed our entire world. So you never know. And the fact that when my mom passed away, and I put that out there, the amount of people from the fantasy football or the football worlds that reached out to me, I was astounded by the number of people. I mean, I wasn't expecting anybody but my core kind of group of little fantasy football friends to kind of weigh in. And there was thousands of people that gave their condolences. And that's like when Yvette's mom passed away, everyone rallied. When the other side of her podcast, Lysandra, don't know her last name because I just met her, the pipes burst in her house, everyone rallied.
Yep.
I mean, it's just a community like no other. If you need help, you kind of ask for it, and you don't even have to.
Right.
That's the beauty of it. You don't have to ask. Like, everyone just jumps in and helps everybody else. And that's what I've been doing, low scale, because of my dad, on my own. And everyone in this world feels the same way and does the same thing. So it's just it's so amazing to fit somewhere.
Yeah.
And to have people think the same way that you do. But yeah, I mean, his influence was massive just on sports in general. I just wish I had gotten into football while he was still here. But I feel like it's his divine intervention that has
That's exactly it.
Absolutely.
That's exactly it.
He signs all the time. At least my daughter signs all the time. Because that was one of the last things he said. If I can send you signs, it's going to be feathers. Look out for feathers. My daughter will walk in, there'll be a feather right in the middle of her bed. And that doesn't belong, or we'll be walking, there'll be like this giant peacock feather, and you're looking around for like a peacock. We're in like the middle of the suburbs. This is not be here. So I know that he is for sure watching out. And now my mom is watching out. And
it's awesome. They know that you're doing big things. They do.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So it's all about taking each day and appreciating everything you've got. And that's what my dad taught me in, unfortunately, his passing and his getting sick, but it's made me such a better person. Such a better person.
And I know that you have relationships when it comes to caring for dogs and being a part of small, big, whatever, that just having them in your life. And what is your relationship like with, animals, pets? I mean, how did you come about, walking and pet sitting and doing all of that?
Well, I did it a little bit before COVID. I had a dog walking thing, but I was successful enough, but I wasn't pushing myself. And then after COVID, I was like, well, I need to do something quick, but I don't want to do something that I hate. Cause I used to work in corporate. I made great money, like stupid great money. I just was miserable. I hated it. And life is not worth hating all of your awake hours to just, live to come home, to be able to relax for 3, to go in and do it all over again. Granted, most people have to. I'm thankful I don't. But I started dog walking again after, and I feel like it was really because my attitude changed and I was a different person. I was much more positive, that things just took off. And I mean, I wake up and I get to play with dogs all day and get paid for it. It's crazy. And then I get to write about football on the other end. I mean, how wonderful is it's just like sometimes I wake up and I'm like, is this really what I get to do every day? Like, look, I have my dog shirt on now.
Yeah,
Life is better with dogs. I
it's
mean, I
true.
watch chickens, I've watched pigs,
Wow.
I've watched horses, um, guinea pigs. I almost got to watch a snake, but then it fell through. I was bummed. But I had to make sure it was fed before because I can't feed it mice. My relationship with animals, I couldn't live in this world if I wasn't around dogs constantly. It's just, I mean, I talk to the dogs all day. People think I'm crazy. They legit, like, I have my clients that will watch their cameras because they love the conversations I have with their dogs. I put music on and we have dance parties. I'm currently babysitting at my boy Little Max's house. He's sleeping on the couch right now. I'm here for until like the 21st. Then I go to another house from the 21st to the 25th. So, sometimes half the month I'm not even home.
Yeah.
And it's the greatest. I mean, it's so much fun. And I say, like you recently did, you weren't happy.
Right.
And you were like, that's it. I want to do something I love. Like,
Yes.
I'm going to try it. And I feel, yes, we all need money. I'm not going to pretend that we don't.
That's the
I'm not,
biggest thing that's like, oh my
yeah,
God, I'm not making money right now.
which is terrifying. So,
Yeah.
you know what? Start something on the side
Yeah.
and try and figure out a way because life's too short
Right.
to be that miserable. If you can get by and you can do it by all means, but life is just too short to absolutely hate what you're doing. And I can honestly say that I don't hate even picking up the poop. I don't hate any part of this job
Yeah.
whatsoever. It's the greatest job if you love dogs. It's
Yeah.
the greatest job in the world. Plus, I get to exercise without even like meaning to do it. I've lost so much weight since COVID. It's ridiculous. And I mean, it's all around just makes me happy. I can tell if a dog's lost 2 pounds or it's weird. I have this weird relationship. My son is even better than I am. He's the dog whisperer. It's crazy. Dogs that don't like people will lay on top of him and kiss him uncontrollably. And people, like, I've had people FaceTime their loved ones and say, can you believe that, like, Spot is kissing their son right now? And she met them an hour ago. It's wonderful. I love it.
That is wonderful. And I have dogs of my own and like
I
just
know.
it's so great,
I,
dogs are just make you smile. It's a hit of, you get your serotonin, you get your dopamine, you get all the
yes.
the good vibes. Dogs, I'm telling you.
Yes. And like all my clients' dogs are like when I get there, the one I have Scout and Shay, who are probably two of my favorites. You're not supposed to have favorites, but two of my favorites. And when I get there, Scout goes ballistic. She jumps and she kicks and she scoots around the house. And it's like, where else are you getting a greeting like this? Where you walk in a house and someone is that excited to see you? You know what I mean?
I know, right?
Even my kids half the time are not excited to see me. And like, just, they're all like legit. They do the zoomies and you walk in and they're just thrilled. And it's like having this gigantic family of dogs that aren't technically mine,
Yeah,
but I'm Aunt Tracy,
that's
you know?
awesome.
Yeah. There's a couple of them that will even, because I watch some every day at the same time. And on the weekends, they sit by the door at the time I'm supposed to be there because I'm not there. Or they'll say my name and they start to cry. So they FaceTime me because the dogs are like, I miss Aunt Tracy. So it's wonderful. I mean, and you legit cannot be in a bad mood. I may start my day off in a bad mood. I'll go to my first client and you try to be that grumpy person. Try to be that grumpy person with a Rottweiler kissing you or
Yeah,
jumping on
right.
you or playing with their football. It's impossible. Just impossible.
So I want to also talk about being a fan of the Chiefs after the Super Bowl, after the repeat of the Super Bowl, and so Jets. And then also now Chiefs super fan. How did that happen?
Jets will always be my number one love because of my dad. But when
Mhm.
I was watching the game, when I was learning it, there was something about the Chiefs, and it wasn't because they were like quote unquote the best team or winners or whatever. They just the type of like family vibe that they threw out kind of talked to me. That they all I don't know. For me, they just seem like they're tighter than a lot of other teams. Just they seem more just like glue. And I took to them and started following them a bit more, and I was like, well, I'm sorry, Jets, but the Chiefs are just my team now. Like, I will always love the Jets. So rooting for Aaron next year. Really praying because I already have my jersey. I got an Aaron Rodgers jersey the second day he was signed on, and I was so disappointed. But that Super Bowl this year, I swear, I don't think I screamed yes at then that last minute so loudly. Sports can't do what other things do for your serotonin. Like, I thought we were done. I thought we were done, and then to come back and win it all and have the goosebumps and that just rush of just happiness because you feel like it's you're part of it, right? Because that's
Mhm.
your team. There's nothing like it. Absolutely nothing like it. I'm so proud of my boys. So
Do you have a favorite player? It doesn't have to just be from the
okay.
Chiefs, just in general.
Well, I love Amon Ra. I
Okay.
love me some Amon Ra, but I'm a Travis Kelsey fan. I
Okay.
don't say that anymore though, because when you say you're a Travis Kelsey fan now as a girl, they assume it's because of Taylor Swift. Which I've come to understand,
Yeah.
which drives me crazy. I love me some Taylor,
Right.
not and they are super happy and they're super adorable
Right.
and it's sickening. But the fact that you could bet on her in the Super Bowl, man,
Yeah.
no, it's a no. So now it's almost like I don't want to say I'm a Travis Kelsey fan because people just assume
They
that that's the
no,
reason why.
and I get upset about not upset, but, it kinda bothers me a little when they do that, even though it's like, whatever. Like, I don't have a problem if you're a fan of Travis Kelce because of Taylor Swift, but that's not the reason why I am, you know? I like
Exactly.
football, and I like good players, and he's both of the he's a great player,
Right, he's
so
the best tight end in my opinion out there, and for whatever reason, when I first started, tight end was my favorite like, that was just who I drafted all the time.
yeah.
I've since learned my lesson because
Yeah.
not many of them,
I've
and
got
now
lots of tight ends that are giving me, like, no points in my dynasty leagues.
right? My god. Now I'm like, "Alright, wide receiver and running back, like, let's stay
Let's
away
go.
from tight end unless you get the first 5." But, But yeah, it was Travis Kelsey. I had my Travis Kelsey signed jersey hung up in my shadow box, and
Awesome.
all my Chiefs jerseys and helmets and everything. But and the Lions are also. I was a big Lions fan for whatever reason this year. When I was doing the draft, I kept coming back to the Lions, and people were laughing at me, but by the end of the expo, I had talked about the Lions so much that I had people they're like, all right, now I have to root for them because you're great. And the Lions, I feel like they might do something. And look at them. They almost freaking made it.
I
Like,
know, it was
so
that
awesome.
story, yes. It was great to see, and I wish them success. I mean,
Me too, man.
yeah.
I've a Dan Campbell shirt. I love him. He's one of the most handsome men on this planet. My goodness. Um, but they were legit the underdogs. They really were, and they killed it. I'm thankful it wasn't the Lions Chiefs Super Bowl because I would have been sad
Yeah.
because it would have been hard to pick. I can always root against the 49ers, no problem.
Oh, yeah. They've won it, they've been close enough, like, when you look at it, they've been there, it was a nice story to see the Lions, and
Right.
I'm still a big Jared Goff fan. Like, I was calling for him to be like, draft him as your quarterback. Like,
Yep. Yep.
so yeah, and Amon-Ra St. Brown, like, yeah,
They have a
you're
great
talking
team.
about great team, just making moves and doing what they need to do, and
Great coach, just great mindset, it's just yeah, I was thrilled for them this year. So they're like they're my underdog. Like the Jets will be my love,
yeah.
for always, but
Mhm.
it's the Chiefs and the Lions. I got the Chiefs as my big boys and the Lions as like the little brother,
Yeah.
That's how I look at it.
Well, I'm so happy that your team was able to win the Super Bowl this year,
Me
and
too, and I hope they do it for a third time. Be so amazing. Let's set history.
go ahead and do it for a third time, but then, like, it's
And
gotta
then
be time for the
right.
Cowboys to win a Super Bowl. Like,
Oh
come
my
on,
god.
it's been hard being a being a
Well, it's like
diehard Cowboys fan for my entire life, and only having only being able to say that they were good when I was 8 or 10 or whatever,
right. Well, it's like the Yankees when
Yeah.
96, 97, 98. Like when they used to always win. So it was almost like you didn't have to watch the games because you knew the Yankees were making it to the World Series. So it got almost boring in a sense because, they just kicked everybody's butt and it was like, all right, well, they're definitely going to be in. So it's almost like that, but I could stand the Chiefs doing 4 or 5 in a row, no problem.
Uh, I don't know if anybody else
Before
could stand it besides
before
the
they hand
Chiefs
it off.
fan. Chiefs nations out there, like, come on, make it happen. You probably
Right?
not
I
gonna do
know.
it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Tracy, it's been an awesome Friday getting to talk with you and getting to know more
Too.
about you, and just ah, thank you so much for coming on, like, for real. Can you go ahead and let everybody know where they can find you again, and then just what you kind of got going on?
Sure. Mainly on Twitter, so GG_FFbots. TGN Network. If you search like WordPress, you'll find me there. There's just a few things out, but I do have 10 or 12 people that will be on the podcast coming up because I have a list. I have one that I just have to edit and I'll get out within the next week or two, which I keep saying. But I have my intro done. So finally,
That's like the hard part.
I know exactly. And then I have a couple of others that I'm going to be on coming up soon. Mad Scientist, I'll be on his soon. I was just on the I think it's Bougie Sports
Okay.
is what they're called, with Yvette, Lana, and Lysandra. So I was on theirs for Valentine's Day, which was
Oh,
so much fun.
I bet.
Not only do they do football, we were talking fashion. Oh God, it was so much fun. And yeah, there's a couple others that I'll be on, but hopefully I'll get a lot more content out there soon. I rambled way too much. Feel free to cut that down to nothing.
No.
That's my outro. I was
I
supposed
do,
to
minimal editing because,
oh my
I'm one of those people that also, procrastinate. So,
yeah.
but
But
this
yeah,
should be
I
out
know
Monday. So I got,
you did good. Yes, you
yeah.
do. You are way way
Well,
better.
I'm trying because I've been so bad about it in the past. Now that I have the time, I'm like, if I don't do it, then it's what a waste of time. Like,
I
use your
know.
time for good.
Exactly. Do your hardest thing first in the
Yep.
morning and then
Yep.
go from there. But I will say, anyone that wants to be on my podcast or wants me to be on theirs, feel free, reach out. I will absolutely, have you on. I would love to be on anybody's. I'm thrilled to kind of sit here and talk football with anybody that wants to. So yeah, just reach out, and most of the time I'm not going to say no unless you're asking me for 8:00 in the morning. Yeah,
Yeah.
it probably won't happen.
Well, I appreciate you coming on in the afternoon, Tracy. Like, thank you so much. After we, had our coffee, got awake, and now we're good.
Yep. Yep.
So yes, everybody go check out Tracy's work. If you have a podcast and you want Tracy to guest, vice versa, just go ahead and hit her up, like she said.
Yep.
Also, make sure that you come back next week for another episode of Get Real with Casey Kasem. And
Absolutely.
remember to stay rad.